This week on World Traveler Cooking, we're going to make Gulai Kambing. This is goat or mutton curry. Now, you could use lamb if you can't get goat, but I much prefer goat for this. Lamb tends to have a little bit of sweetness reminiscent of beef, while goat tends not to have that. So I have about 1 kilogram of goat meat here. Typically, they would either just use goat meat like this, or ideally like some short ribs might be added in. Some people even add organ meat, but I'm just doing straight, cut up goat meat. At any rate, this is a very typical Javanese dish, so it's going to be a slightly sweeter curry. One source of sweetness will be a little bit of tamarind, and we will make tamarind water just like we did for the for some of the other dishes, but we're going to use fresh tamarind here because we want the sweetness. Then I have my aromatics. My aromatics are lemongrass. I'm using 2 stalks, which have been, it looks like 3 stalks, which have been cut in half. 5 daun salam. You can use bay leaves for this instead. I have 9 here, but I'll probably only use 5. And then I have 5 lime leaves. Those are, something you can typically find at most Asian supermarkets. If you can't find tamarind, you can also use. You can actually just leave it out, but I kind of like it in it. Then we have our main spice mixture. This is going to include about half a teaspoon or so of cumin. I would say I'm going to use about a tablespoon or so of coriander. I plan to use 5 of these little cardamom pods. I dropped one there. This piece of turmeric is about 5 centimeters long. If you can't find fresh turmeric, I guess you could use dried, but Indonesian cuisine tends to use fresh turmeric, so try to get it. We have just a small chunk of galangal, and we have a bit of ginger here. These are very much, use however much you like. I'm going to grate probably half of this into my spice mixture, and then I have 5 chili peppers here. You can use more or less if you like. It very much depends on how spicy you want it. Then I have, looks like about 1 liter or so of thin coconut milk. Now, if you're buying coconut milk at the store, what you want to do is you want to look at the percentage of coconut kernel extract. So your really thick coconut milks and coconut creams may be, 97, even 100%, close to 100% coconut extract. You want something a lot less than that, so maybe 50%. If you only can find thick coconut milk, dilute it down by 50%, so half and half with water. On top of this, we will season it with salt, white pepper, and palm sugar, and I'll show this to you a little more when we get through. It's one of the few sugars I know of, actually very raw cane sugar is similar, that it just doesn't get absorbed into the body very fast. So it for people who have struggled with blood sugar, for example, it's a low glycemic index food. So anyway, these are our ingredients. I'm going to get started by peeling the ginger, turmeric, and galangal, and then we will get started. I think I'm going to roast the turmeric and ginger and galangal before I crush them. I think I'm going to do that. Not all recipes do, some don't, but that's what I'm going to do. And of course we have, I'm going to say 12 to 15 of these little shallots. I think you could use 3 or 4 European ones, and maybe 6 or so cloves of garlic. Those are. Now, the easiest way to peel any of this is to just use a spoon and scrape off the skin like this. And I'm going to do this with all of these. Then I'll be back. I'm going to cut them up a little bit, and then we will put them in the ulek. Again, if you don't have an ulek, an immersion blender or a food processor would work. So now for the ulek, I'm going to start with my dry spices. And for the cardamom, I'm just going to crush it a bit. These outer pieces will get just shed off fairly quickly. And I'm going to grind the spices a bit first. The reason is, otherwise they won't grind at all once we add the wet ingredients. They don't have to be ground all the way down, but it's important to break them up a little bit and kind of, otherwise you could have like large pieces in there, and that's not really what we want. And again, these little pieces of the shell from the cardamom we can eventually set aside. If we don't get them all out, it won't be the end of the world, but might as well get out the big pieces. And once we have this somewhat ground down, the next thing we will add into our mix will be these candlenuts. I did forget to mention the candlenuts before, but candlenuts will give the mixture a bit of, it'll help to thicken the curry. So once this is in place, I'm just going to kind of scoot it over to the side a little bit, put the galangal in, crush it. This is something a food processor will do a different job of. And what you get with these is a very spread out, basically all the fibers in this spread out. And so, like with a food processor, fibers will get cut. With this, the fibers will spread out. And so the flavor that's in between the fibers will awaken a little more. So this is why, one of the reasons why I actually prefer this approach. And it may take a little bit of time, but it's not actually that bad. Now, I'm sure Indonesians will laugh at this because this is kind of a silly mistake, but I didn't add the chili peppers early enough, and so they didn't fully grind down. So we don't have something that's quite as uniform as we'd like, but I think this will do. I would recommend adding the chili peppers right after the ginger, before the garlic and the... so now this is going to get roasted, and I'm going to make the tamarind water. So heating up a wok here, once it's hot, add some oil, a couple tablespoons. Let that heat up a little bit. Now I'm going to scrape all this spice paste in. And we're going to cook this for a while. And after this has been cooking for a bit, we'll add our aromatics. Yeah, this is starting to get fragrant already. I'm going to turn the heat way down. I'm going to add my aromatics. So here I am cooking my aromatics. I've had to add a little more oil, so we're at 3, maybe 4 tablespoons of oil total. And it's no longer sticking, but I've had to switch to the metal. I've turned the heat way down. We're just going to cook this for a few minutes while everything becomes super aromatic. So I've now removed the spice paste, and I'm going to start frying the goat meat. So I've added another 2 or 3 tablespoons of oil, and we're going to go ahead and just start sauteing this a little bit. And now that that's starting to brown, I'm going to pour in, so I've added a bit of water here to the tamarind water, and I've stirred it around so that now the seeds are mostly free. And I'm just going to strain it off so I don't get the tamarind seeds. And I'm going to go ahead and stir this up. We're going to cook this until all the water is out and the meat is nicely browning. So now the water's all gone, it's frying, and it's starting to brown. So in goes again the spice mixture and the coconut milk. I'm going to stir in the spices first. And you can just smell it right away. And now, so while we are doing this, we are going to salt, pepper, and add coconut sugar. Remember, since we're adding coconut sugar, we don't have to add as much salt. So, there goes these two. And then, let's get to the coconut sugar as this boils. So what we're going to do now is we're going to add a bit of coconut sugar. It's a matter of to taste really. So I'm just going to break off some of this. And I'll put some more aside, so if I want to use it later, I can. Now, this is coconut sugar itself. It's really wonderful stuff. Very delicious, great in coffee and tea. But it's also commonly used throughout Javanese cuisine, where it gives Javanese cuisine its characteristically sweet flavor. Here, this is sometimes called gulai Jawa, which literally means Javanese sugar. So I'll come back after this has been boiling for a bit, and we'll be closer to being done here. So after a couple of hours, this is starting to get somewhat tender in places. So I'm still going to leave this to cook, but I'm going to do the taste test with one of the more tender pieces. If you need to at this point, you can add a little bit of water, but try to keep the consistency at about this level here, because you don't want it to turn into rendang, but you don't want it to get really soupy either. So I'm going to come back with a little bit of rice, and then we'll add a little bit of this to it for taste test. So, let's see. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to put just a piece of meat right next to this, and I'm going to spoon a bit of sauce over the top, and then I'm going to put one leaf on as a garnish. I'm going to use a daun salam, but you could use like another leaf if you'd like. And so for our very basic, simple piece, here we have it. Gulai Kambing. Now for the taste test. And now for the taste test. I'm going to start with some of this rice and sauce. So, despite the amount of coconut sugar in here, the sweetness is very muted. You get a bit of sweetness, but what really makes it sweeter are the spices rather than the sugar itself. It's a wonderfully rich sauce. And now we're going to go ahead and try some of the meat here. Sorry. The meat is wonderfully spiced, very fragrant, a bit spicy. And where you really kind of taste the effect of the sugar is in the fact that it has body, but it doesn't taste so salty. So so this is sort of like a typical aspect of, say, Javanese curries and stuff. It's actually really nice. It does need to cook a bit longer, but I'm getting impatient and hungry, so I'm going to eat it now. This is really delicious. I really like Gulai Kambing. I like Kambing generally, Kambing being goat, but this is absolutely delicious. So if you find this content interesting, I hope I've earned a like and a subscription from you, and please check out my Patreon page if you'd like to support my work. Patreon subscribers get access to videos early. Not all my videos early, but many of them, sometimes as much as 3 months in advance. So yeah, feel free to check that out. And if you make a dish like this, I'd love to hear how you make it differently. I've looked at so many different recipes here, and they're different. Some people add tamarind, some people don't. Some people add palm sugar, some people add sweet soy sauce. There are different seasonings that people add. But this is sort of the one that I've come up with as sort of a composite of many of these. So I'd love to hear how you do it differently. What you think I could do differently, better, other than, of course, as I say, grind the chili peppers a little earlier. And yeah, bon appetit, and see you next week.